The first item on today's agenda is to elect a chair for the meeting. Do we have a nomination, please? Yeah, and seconded. And all those in favour? That's unanimous. I'll pass to you, Councillor Bithell.
Thanks very much, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of the City Plans panel. My name is Councillor Hannah Bithell and I'll be chairing today's meeting. Could I remind everyone that today's meeting is being live streamed on the City Council website so that the public can observe the meeting without needing to be present. City Plans panel deals with applications from the city centre as well as the largest and most significant applications the council receive. The aim of the panel is to hear all the relevant information from applicants, members of the public and council officers to help members of the panel make their decision. Could I now invite members and officers to introduce themselves, and please mute your microphone once you've done so. If we can start on my left, thank you.
Good afternoon, members. I'm Daljit Singh. I lead the Central Area Planning team.
Good afternoon, Jess Ashton, Principal Planner in the Central team.
Good afternoon, I'm Lisa Brannan, Principal Engineer Highways.
Afternoon, Simon Clothier from the Environmental Health team.
Good afternoon, Councillor Jules Heselwood, Wheatwood Ward.
Hello and good afternoon, Councillor Asghar Khan, Councillor for Bermontos from Richmond Hill Ward.
Good afternoon, everybody. Councillor Katie Dyer, Killingbeck and Seacroft.
Afternoon, Councillor John Garvani, Horsforth Ward.
Good afternoon, Councillor Peter Carlill, Carvely and Farsley Ward.
Good afternoon, Councillor Annie Maloney, Beeston and Holbeck Ward.
Good afternoon, Phil Ward, Team Leader, Landscape, Heritage and Ecology.
Good afternoon, John Stonard, Team Leader, Design and Projects.
Good afternoon, everybody. Councillor Dan Cohn from the Woodley Ward.
Good afternoon, Councillor Barry.
Sorry, heckling you.
Yeah, Stephen, when it was more inside, it's heckling me now, isn't it? Councillor Barry Anderson, Allen Wharfdale Ward.
Good afternoon, Andy Bowles, Clerk to the panel.
Good afternoon, Amy Davis, Legal Services.
Good afternoon, David Feely, Chief Planning Officer.
Good afternoon, Jonathan Carr, Head of Development Management.
Thank you. Lewis, would you like to introduce? You got missed.
Good afternoon, Lewis Foote, Senior Technical Officer, and I'll be in charge of the PowerPoint today.
Brilliant. And thank you, members, for such enthusiastic introductions. We'll move to the agenda with item number 1.
Thank you, Chair. There are no appeals against the refusal of inspection of documents. Item 3, no exempt information on today's agenda. Item 4, we've got no late items. Item 5, could I ask members if they've got any interest to declare? No. Moving on to item number 6, apologies for absence. We've got apologies from Councillors Campbell and Brooks, and we've got Councillor Gavani in attendance as substitute today. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We'll move to item number 7, which is minutes of the previous meeting held on the 11th of April 2024. Do members accept these minutes are a true and correct records? Seeing nods. Okay, we'll move on then. Are there any matters arising from the minutes? Lovely. Okay, so agenda item number 8. We've got application number 2306280FU and 2306281LI. Could I invite the planning officer to speak to this report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a full planning application and listed building consent for the change of use of Springfield House, which is a Grade 2 listed building, the demolition of the adjacent 20th century wings and construction of replacement buildings of between 4 and 13 stories to create purpose-built student accommodation, including works to the listed building and hard and soft landscaping. The applicants engaged in an in-depth pre-application process with detailed input from conservation and design colleagues in particular, as well as highways and landscape officers. And we've got Phil Ward, John Stannard and Simon Clothier to in attendance today to address any matters that might arise. So the application's been brought to panel because there is an objection from Historic England as a statutory consultee. So it's a 0.77 hectare site in the city centre boundary. It's within the Woodhouse Clarendon Road conservation area, and the boundary of the conservation area runs through the site, taking in the building. So Springfield House itself is Grade 2 listed, and then to the east, you've got the University of Leeds campus as designed by Chamberlain, Powell and Bonn. And within the university campus, there are Grade 2 listed buildings, but also the Grade 2 star listed Roger Stevens building. So those that were in attendance at the site visit will recall that the site slopes steeply from northwest to southeast. So Springfield House is significantly higher than Clarendon Way. And then more broadly, the land rises to the north and west up the hill and falls generally to the south and east. And it's a site that's situated between two very distinct character areas. So you've got the residential Victorian red brick nature of the conservation area across to the north and west. And then the institutional larger scale buildings of the university and the Leeds Teaching Hospitals Trust to the east and south. So this just shows again how the site is really at the junction of these two very distinct character areas. So Springfield House was constructed in 1792 as a very grand residential villa. There was a Roman Catholic seminary built in the 1870s, and the site lay in the way of the university's development plan, and it was listed in the 1960s, but the seminary was demolished in the 1970s, and then Springfield House was converted in the 80s to office use, and the wings were added. So it's just some photographs of the current site conditions, and including the photographs of the 1980s wings. And although it was considered best practice at the time on how to convert a listed building, I think particularly from the rear, the wings serve to really hide and you lose the listed building amongst the site. So they present a poor quality environment. And I've just included some photographs from my site visit, which hopefully demonstrate that point and show how the red sort of 1980s brick really you lose and the listed buildings hidden within the site. So this just shows the current site layout with the listed building at the centre and the footprint of the existing wings to either side, as compares to the proposed site layout where the development occupies a similar footprint to that of the existing wings with the Springfield House at the heart, glazed links to either side, a 4-storey wing, and then in the southwest, this section is 4 and 5 stories, and then in the northeast, it's 10, 11 and 13 stories, this element. You can see how the southeastern half of the site is retained as green space with the existing trees retained. And Springfield House becomes the heart of the development, with the main entrance being the historic front door to the building and a pedestrian level access through the site in front of the building and a new stepped entrance from Clarendon Way leading you up to that front door. Sorry to flip back. So there's a non-definitive footpath which is retained through the site, and then the wooded landscaped area is retained. And there's an area of sort of formal green space at the front and more hard surfaced amenity space to the rear. And then the servicing is from Clarendon Way, and there's a secondary service area on Seminary Street using the existing accesses. So hopefully you can see on this image how the listed building is much more clearly articulated, and the impact of those glazed links serving to help it stand out. And the proposal sort of scales up as you move away from the listed building, and you can see the taller element over on the right hand side. So just looking at the floor plans, so the listed building and the wings become, the ground floor of the listed building, the wings become part of an amenity hub. There's also plant, bin storage, cycle storage, and an energy centre accommodated at ground floor level, but also some studio accommodation at the extremes. The first floor of the listed building is also amenity space. There's stair course to each of the wings, and then the accommodation in the form of cluster flats and studio accommodation, providing 334 bed spaces, 42% of which are studios, and 58% of the accommodation is in cluster flats. The proposal's in compliance with the emerging standards in the draft SPD. And just as we move up the building, you can see the accommodation, and there's photovoltaics on the roof. Looking in more detail at the landscaping, again, the trees to the front are retained. The area to the south of the building becomes a sort of modern quad with grass planting and stone seating to the front. And then there's two hard surface social courtyards to the rear. And just some precedent images of the hard surfacing materials, so permeable paving, York stone sets, stone block benches, and in terms of the soft planting, a more sort of natural grasses and native trees to the front, and then shade-loving species in the rear areas with the planting selected to match the aspect. And hopefully you can see how the front of the building becomes much more usable and active than it is at present, with level access provided via a concealed stair lift to the main entrance. And looking at the approach on Clarendon Way to the southwest, the scale here is 5 and 4 stories, which we consider relates very well to the domestic and residential scale of the conservation area. At the rear, hopefully you can see how the contrasting architectural treatment and the listed buildings better revealed, and you can see more of the side elevation, so it really stands out. And then the taller element is viewed in the context of the larger scale institutional buildings of the university in the northeast and the Dental Institute. So just looking at the elevation drawings, you can see that there is a contrast in scale, and how scale is distributed across the site has been closely considered in detail through the pre-app process. Initially, the application came in as symmetrical, but it's evolved through discussion and collaboration with conservation and design colleagues to ensure that the scale in the southwest is reduced due to the context with the conservation area, and then in the northeast, where we considered it was less sensitive due to proximity to the large scale university buildings, that's where the height has been accommodated. And the rear elevation, you can see how the scale of the openings and the differences in materials adds interests and helps distinguish the new elements with the listed building. And then you can see the smaller wing in the foreground, and the materiality and the layout. They look like a cohesive group, but the taller element is recessive because of the materials. And then on the taller element, you can see how it's been split into 3 elements, which helps to break down the mass, and how the verticality of the windows forms a kind of banding which echoes the horizontal emphasis in the university buildings. So a base study showing how there's a variety of different brick tones and brick bonds, and how it's applied adds interest. There's a lightweight, very simple top floor, which sort of finishes the wings almost like a contemporary attic. Again, again, more of a base study. You can see how the undercroft is highlighted through glazed bricks, framing a route through. And then the northeast elevation, you can see that clear vertical banding that I talked about. This is just a detail around a perforated panel where they've picked up on the historic fanlight above the listed building and then reimagined that as a kind of a repeating pattern. And then the perforated panels allow you to maximize glazing while reducing solar gain. And in terms of assessing the impact, we've looked at verified views from a range of different viewpoints to really see how the development will sit in context. So looking from Hyde Street in Clarendon Way, you can see how the scale relates very well to the domestic scale of the buildings in the conservation area, and the materials work well and enhance that elevation. And then as you look at it from Clarendon Way, you can see there's much more variety and interest in this elevation, and that the trees have a significant screening effect. And then looking from Springfield Mount, the impact of the topography and the levels helps the taller element sit comfortably within its surrounding context. And on Mount Preston Street, again, you see with Charles Morris Hall on the left-hand side, how the trees screen the development, and its location towards the bottom of a hill helps reduce its impact. And then looking at views from Chancellor's Court, so within the university complex, I don't think you can make it out on this, but there is a very small element that appears on the left-hand side. So just see there, it just breaks through, but there are already other examples of Charles Morris Hall where other buildings sort of rise above that roof line. And then a plan of the building heights, which show the contrast between the taller buildings with larger footprints to the east of the university and hospital, and then the more domestic scale on the west. And again, some site sections which show that parts of the building are taller, but generally separation distances are generous, and it sits comfortably within the context of a varied and wider townscape. And again, some distant views or sections as you look back. And again, I think this shows that it sits within the wider townscape comfortably. So there are some highway matters still to be resolved. They're set out in paragraphs 153 to 158 of the report, but in particular, a pedestrian connection to the university, because of the drop or the lack of drop curbs and this redundant access, people in a wheelchair or with mobility issues can't access the university without resorting to using the carriageway, which is a really important road safety issue. And the area is not in the applicant's ownership. It's not part of the adopted highway because it's owned by the University of Leeds, but the applicants entered into negotiations with the University of Leeds with a view to getting their agreement to improving that route. And that's required before the application is determined, and we're proposing to resolve it under delegated powers before we determine the application. The other matter to note is around wind, and since the time of writing the report, highways have confirmed that they require a fixed wind baffle within the site, just in this location, to address potential wind safety exceedance. So when it was modelled in the wind testing, the impact of the trees was that it was reduced to within safe levels, but obviously trees and not necessarily permanent structures. So highways have confirmed we require some permanent mitigation in that location, which will be addressed through condition. Following the writing of the report, the level of contribution to some off-site pedestrian and cycling walking scheme has been agreed at 155,000, and that will be captured within the Section 106 agreement. I've got another update to note. So since the time of writing, we've had one of the objectors has withdrawn their objector, and the owner of the lodge, which is the small cafe building adjacent to the site, has withdrawn their objection and confirmed that they're supportive. They welcome the building being brought into new use, and they recognise that it represents investment, regeneration and increasing student footfall, which they consider will benefit local businesses and the broader community. So just to conclude, consider it's a good location for student accommodation. It'll bring vitality to the area and improve the condition of a street which currently has a forgotten back of house servicing feel to it. We've noted how the topography of the area and the mature trees help to mitigate or screen the taller element, which limits its visibility and impact. We've noted that there are impacts for heritage assets, but on balance, we've taken into account the benefits, including the enhancement to the listed building, including reinstating its planned form, benefits the conservation area through the improvement of legibility and the landscaping of the site, repurposing a vacant listed building for its original residential use in a sustainable brownfield site, and associated street scene enhancements. So on balance, the application is brought to panel with a recommendation to defer and delegate to the Chief Planning Officer for approval, subject to resolution of the outstanding highway matters noted in the report, suitable conditions, a Section 106 agreement, and because of the objection from Historic England, it's subject to referral to the Secretary of State for the Department of Levelling Up, Housing and Communities. And just finally to note that there are some samples that the applicant has bought, which are in the room towards and a scale model. So at an appropriate point, it'd be good to suggest if members could review those materials. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jess. We have got speakers here against the proposal. Can I invite you to the table, please?
Afternoon.
Thank you.
I'm Steve Allison. I run the Faversham, which is a...
Just sorry, love, just before you start, you'll have 4 minutes between you, so 2 minutes each.
Okay.
And Lewis will be timing and we'll let you know.
Okay, sure.
All righty. Thank you.
3, 2, 1. So basically, we run the Faversham business, which is less than 10 metres away from this particular scheme. We feel that the scheme has not addressed any of our concerns at all. Our grounds are an integral part of how the business is made up. We, at the moment, our wedding bookings for this year alone is 60. The lawn is an integral part of the event. The area outside of our building, directly outside, is also integral, and so is the rear. The developers referenced the rear as being our only public space, which is completely not correct. We requested that the scheme be lowered on the adjacent wings to the listed building because that completely overlooks and removes all of our privacy. It's completely intrusive and it's absolutely not acceptable. This is a serious threat to our business. Serious threat because the bookings, the way the events work at the moment, it's private. We're not overlooked from that aspect whatsoever. The scheme itself is literally, as I said, between 10 and 15 meters away from the line of our property. So it's the impact from that intrusiveness is literally going to be disastrous, we believe. Disastrous. The towers are completely not acceptable. Having student lighting on 3 towers during winter nights will completely and utterly change the landscape. It doesn't fit in. with the properties adjacent to it, you refer to topography and you refer to the university buildings, but there's just not, the properties to the west have not been considered. My property in particular, I've been operating there for 20 years, 21 years now. We've operated successfully, we've been compliant, we work by the rules, but this scheme is a serious threat. And I just want everybody to know it's a serious threat to this business, because if we have to close down, then it will be a travesty. We employ more than 30 full-time employees, mainly working in events, provide also suppliers that provide services for the outside event. And this property is, without a doubt, going to damage our business, not to mention the build, the 2-year, 3-year build.
Thank you. That's great. Is it Hugh?
Yeah.
Thank you, love.
Okay.
Are you okay to turn your, thank you.
It's on, isn't it? Okay. I am Hugh Hubbard, and I speak as a local resident and as a member of the Littlewood House Community Association. This is a massive development which will tower over even the existing multi-storey university buildings. It will greatly impact on the University of Leeds Grade 2 listed buildings complex, all designed by Chamberlain, Powell and Bonn and built between 1965 and 75 in a planned aesthetic surrounding Chancellor's Court, a showpiece example of the genre. These proposed buildings of 13 stories will tower over and totally destroy the aesthetic of this space. The developers presented one view from Chancellor's Court showing minimal impact. From other viewpoints around Chancellor's Court taken by most people shows a much greater impact of this development. The University of Leeds has over 30,000 students, most of whom will have lectures in the Grade 2 star listed Roger Stevens building, a lecture block with a capacity of over 2,500 students. The main route from the Roger Stevens building to the rest of the university is via a footbridge along Red Route connecting with mathematics. At peak times, this point is likely to have over 1,000 students an hour passing by, as well as lecturers, visiting academics and business people, a very public aspect. This new development will greatly impact the view along this route, viewed by thousands, including future leaders of our society. I've sketched out some views of possible impact. The planned application also dwarfs and trivializes Springfield House as a 1790s Grade 2 listed building. This proposal, although competently designed, is functional, but architecturally unremarkable and similar to many recently built in the centre of Leeds. If this application is granted, it will set a precedent for future high-rise buildings around the University of Leeds campus, totally destroying any coherence to campus architecture. This proposal shows contempt for architectural aesthetic, for a conservation area and local listed buildings is not worthy of the City of Leeds, and if built would be much regretted in decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. Do members have any questions for the speakers, please? No? Okay. Thank you very much. You're welcome to go back over to the other seats. We also have representatives here in support of the proposal. Can I invite you guys up to this table now? And once you're ready, you will also have 4 minutes to share between you to put your case to the panel.
Chair, members of the panel, I'm Richard Irving, acting on behalf of the applicants. We've worked with your professional team since 2022 on this project via the pre-application process and subsequent planning application to provide a student scheme, which at its heart is Springfield House. Ian Walsh of Cartwright Pickard Architects will lead you through the approach to design, which, using key views, has greatly assisted in demonstrating how the proposed new wings to the listed building sit contextually, not only in terms of the setting of the listed building and conservation area, but also in terms of the street scene, having regard to the local vernacular and building form to the north and south. We fully appreciate schemes of this nature will always likely to attract interest from neighbouring properties, but we've always sought to address any concerns that may have been raised by providing detailed supporting evidence as part of the application submission. For example, in relation to amenity issues raised by the Faversham, the application was accompanied by a daylight assessment as well as an acoustic report, both of which confirm light and noise will not be compromised. In response to the comments made by the University of Leeds, again, further verified views were undertaken to demonstrate that there will be no impact from views within Chancellor's Court, and the air quality reports being signed off by Environmental Health as being wholly acceptable. Following Historic England's comments, an on-site presentation was made to their representative. It was agreed following that meeting that further views would be prepared, both verified and street views, both in winter and summer. Clearly, the issue of design is subjective, and having worked with your officers, both myself, the architects, heritage consultant, urban design officer, planning officer, and conservation officer, all support the proposal. Chair, I've worked in Leeds for in excess of 32 years now, and I can hand on heart say that all of us as a team genuinely feel custodians for the city centre, and we want the best in terms of design, but also the benefits of development. Although the proposed development does naturally affect heritage assets, it is recognised in the officer's report that most of these effects are positive. Any perceived negative impact is heavily outweighed by a number of considerable benefits, including enhancement of the listed building and conservation area, specifically through the restored plan form of Springfield House. Additional benefits arising from the scheme are fully set out in this paragraph. Yeah.
Chair, members of the panel, Springfield House is a site that has been most recently inward looking, resulting in a significant loss in its sense of place. Our proposal is focused on addressing this and reinstating the listed Springfield House back into the heart and daily use of the site. We have achieved this through a balanced development that responds to the transitional nature of the site between the two distinct urban characters of the adjacent Little Woodhouse neighbourhood to the west and University campus to the east. We have maintained a lower scale of development to Clarendon Way in keeping with the scale of the adjacent Victorian terraces, whilst locating a taller element to Seminary Street in keeping with the scale of the University campus. This graded massing of the development has been tested through multiple design tools to strike the correct contextual balance. A key material factor to this is the varying site levels, roofscape, and mature tree lines experienced on approach to the site, whereby the perceived scale of the development is experienced from street level in the immediate context of similar scaled buildings. Our selection of brick tones adds to this perception and mutuality of the taller elements. This is supported by the verified views provided in our engagement and further responses to consultee representations. The detailing of the elevations provides a strong material expression of the new buildings that respect and enhance the presence of the listed Springfield House in a non-pastiche manner. Window screening through fixed panels to openable windows and opaque etching to the fixed windows provides enhanced visual privacy to the adjoining plots in a subtle and robust manner, as demonstrated in consultation with the Faversham. The proposed extensions and rich landscaping provide safe and enhanced linkages to and from the university and city.
Sorry, can I just pause you for a second? We've lost our tech and I'm not 100% sure we're still live, and that's not fair on residents. And then just skip back sort of 3 sentences once I give you the go ahead again in a second.
Understand.
Thank you.
Not at all.
Thank you. We are still live. It was just our internal screens that have gone off and are now back. Lovely. So if you'd like to carry on, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Excellent. The detailing of the elevations provides a strong material expressions of the new buildings that respect and enhance the presence of the listed Springfield House in a non-pastiche manner. Window screening through fixed panels to openable windows and opaque etching to the fixed windows provides enhanced visual privacy to the adjoining plots in a subtle and robust manner, as demonstrated in consultation with the Faversham. The proposed extensions and rich landscaping provide safe and enhanced linkages to and from the university and city that benefits from improved surveillance onto the site. This is celebrates the presence of Springfield House as experienced by the residents and wider community. This is best expressed through the communal point of arrival at the open forecourt and front entrance of Springfield House.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Members, have we got any questions for the speakers, please? Councillor Carlo?
Yeah, a couple of different questions. We heard from Mr. Allison from the Faversham there. I noted in the comment you'd made, you used the phrase in consultation with the Faversham a couple of times. I just wondered if you could talk us through how that consultation has happened and if there's been any changes in the plans based on the comments they'd made. That's my first question. My second one then is, would you be able to just explain to me around how you've developed this around Springfield House and what you think this does around that listed building?
So firstly, in terms of the consultation with the Faversham, we engaged in conversation with them and brought them through the model, the virtual model that we had at the time of the proposals of the meeting and discussions. Through that meeting, we were able to bring the member from the Faversham into the building and show how the window design and the etching can provide the privacy even on the upper levels of the tower block, tower element of the building and development towards their site and plot. We also demonstrated building lines whilst up to the boundary of an urban design suitable in scale. We also engaged in having completed the acoustic assessments through specialist design consultants who were able to demonstrate that there was no harm impacted on the adjacent plots. And then in terms of Springfield House, question 2, in terms of Springfield House, this is for us has been about forming the prime function of that daily use and of the students into Springfield House, and then adjoining these new residential, the bedroom blocks, sensitively across into the listed building. The main way we've achieved that is then providing a suitable kind of tertiary linkage between the two. And that means that every day, the daily access of the students is through the Springfield House, celebrates all that space, reconfigures the internal form that brings it back to the original plan form of Springfield House, and through the daily support and amenity use of the students. And then through that, and that would be the heart of the scheme in terms of 24/7 concierge present, management, additional student areas for the students to practice work and study within. And then from that connectivity, then we've got from our single point of access, then brings us safely through into the building and then through to the adjacent blocks of the 2 wings and then into the bedroom accommodation. So it's very much at the heart of the development. It's not just a token gesture. This is the frontal address of this proposal.
Do you want to come back in, Councillor?
If I can, thank you. That's fine in terms of the second question. In the first one, I think what I've heard, if you can confirm, is you've showed them at the Faversham what you're doing, but I don't really hear that much has changed because of that. Am I getting the view that from the beginning of the designs, you feel that there isn't an impact on their business at all, and nothing has therefore needed to be changed in your designs at all from the concerns they've raised?
Based on specialist assessments, daylight, acoustic, we believe that there is no, well, so we know there is no harm to the adjoining plot. We, having delivered student accommodation with the developer and partner operators, we understand how student accommodation works and how to get robust design within the bedrooms and the window and the elevation design. So as such that there is no no harm impacted on the adjoining sites.
Thank you. Any further questions from member? Councillor Cumming?
Thank you. Sorry, I'm really struggling here. I was doing really well with you until you said something that made no sense to me at all. So we're absolutely clear as a panel. The position of the developer is a right big tall tower right next door to an open air event space is going to have no negative impact on that open air event space. That's the position that you're asking us to accept.
Councillor, based on the technical evidence that was submitted as part of the application, when you look at issues surrounding amenity, we looked very carefully at daylight sunlight assessment with a very robust report that was presented as part of the application, which demonstrate that there's no loss of amenity as a result of daylight or sunlight. And the same with acoustic coming from both sides. So those that relate to amenity issues were addressed through the technical evidence.
Yeah, but you haven't addressed the impact, the potential impact on the Faversham's business by the presence of your development that is not there at the moment, have you?
I think, as Ian said, in terms of the one of the issues that Mr. Allison raised was in relation to overlooking, and that's been taken into account in terms of critical distances and also the way the windows have been formatted in terms of the louvres and so on, so that they have been built into the design of the building to assist in that regard.
Okay, I'm sure the panel will take that under advisement. Thank you.
Any other questions from members? No? I have a couple. Can I get an update on where we're up to with the highways discussions with Leeds Uni? And then also, having been on site this morning, it was felt that the trees at the front were potentially going to cause safety issues in terms of the lighting, and also with it being a conservation area, how are you going to look to do lighting in a way that's sympathetic but ensures women's safety in an area where we already know there are a potential for issues? Thank you.
Good afternoon. Yes, we've had positive dialogue with the university to date, and in principle, they are accepting of our proposals. Clearly, that negotiation needs to be concluded, but the principles around the enhancements that we're undertaking are supported by the university.
In relation to the existing trees, what you'll have noticed is a lot of undergrowth within there, that it's stopping that natural surveillance of the site. So all that undergrowth will be removed. So it'll create a nice open visual permeability, both from the site and into the site. The light levels will wrap around the whole entire perimeter of the building and have been designed by lighting specialists to provide the sufficient lux levels. And there will also be CCTV coverage covering all those areas as well. In terms of the building itself and the windows, that also adds to that natural surveillance of the site, or the two permeability routes through the site.
Thank you. Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow on the highway, I'm really pleased that you are having the positive conversation with the University of Leeds. But while we were there this morning on the site, we were standing at the corner of Hyde Street and Clarendon Way. It's a busy road, and it was very, very busy road actually and it's a blind corner. What measures will you be taking to make sure we calm the traffic down?
Hi, Councillor. Sorry, my name's Paul Irwin. I've been looking at the transport aspects of the development, and yeah, we've got a kind of a scheme of improvement at that area where we're going to improve pedestrian crossing facilities. We've looked at visibility, and that's all fine. There is an access into the development at that southwest corner, and that will all be brought forward under a Section 278 agreement with the council. So I think we've got that addressed, I think.
Thank you. Also, while we were there, the service area for the site, there was a increased footfall from the pedestrian using that, and they were not using the footpath. And how are you going to be changing the perception of people's for start using the footpath?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yes, so we've got a segregated route being provided adjacent to the new service area. So the service area will be, it'll be I think there was a visual of it earlier in the presentation. So that's sufficient for a refuse vehicle to turn around, but then the pedestrian route is separate to that, and that obviously allows pedestrians to safely traverse through that area. Thank you.
This is a question to the officers. The
Hold on,
Historic
we'll move on
England.
to officer questions in a
Sorry,
minute.
yeah.
Have we got any final questions to the speakers? Councillor Dye?
Thank you. It's a question about sustainability. You've said that you're going to use PVs and air source heat pumps. Will that be the total energy supply to the development?
On sustainability, we're taking a fabric first approach. So we're looking to reduce the amount of energy requirement for the scheme. As part of that reduces that amount of energy input, and therefore it is tested through not just today's climate challenge, but future climate models as well. We've tested against that. So that is the required energy input. We are future proofing it as well if the district heating is extended through to the site. So it allows for that future provision for that connection.
Did you want to come back in? Thank you. Any further questions from members? No? Okay, in which case, if you're happy to head back across, folks, we will move on to questions to officers, and I'll bring Councillor Khan back in.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the Historic England objections, have you addressed those objections, and what's your what would you advise us?
The objection from Historic England is principally to the taller element. That hasn't been changed. I think it's fair to say that I share a similar concern because it is bringing height towards the listed building. The difference between my position in Historic England is that I've factored in the benefits to the listed building, which we talked about this morning, and they come from the improved visibility of the listed building. It's virtually invisible at the moment, but the path and the removal of undergrowth will rediscover views that have been lost. The listed building itself will be much more legible because of the set-off provided by the glazed links. The plan form of the building will be reinstated. At the moment, you can walk from one end to the other and you don't know where you are. It's a long corridor. This scheme will bring back the original double power plan and you will know where you are. You'll know that you're in the listed building. So in my opinion, the benefits outweigh the harm from the height of the taller element.
Councillor Carlo?
Thank you. Coming back to the questions I asked previously, I mean, I'm a bit concerned about this anyway. I'm a bit concerned in general about how it moves the character of the area on. If you stood in amongst this series of buildings, and I used to work in an office around there, looking up from there, it already feels a bit hemmed in by various buildings on all sides as the campus has expanded. I am very concerned about the tower more than anything, I think. So I would just like to understand some thoughts around that. What I don't think we'd really want is for there suddenly to be a huge increase in towers in that area, so we find that the whole thing becomes part of the city centre, when I don't think we're in the city centre here, in essence. Second part of the question is just really on that impact to the business of the Faversham. I appreciate what the developer's saying, that if they put something on the glazing of the window, then people on the 13th story may not be able to actively see your wedding as it's happening below. But I think if you're booking your wedding in that event space, you aren't going to know what's in that window, and you aren't necessarily going to want 13 stories of students looking down on you while you're at what is a private family event, really. So I am concerned. Has there been any economic impact done around this to look at what the impact could be on the business of the Faversham, and how much should that weigh up in my decision today?
Yeah,
Councillor Carlyle, if I can come in here, and Lewis, if we can bring up one of the slides of the proposed development with the Faversham in the context. Which number is it, Jess?
Apologies, doesn't seem to be coming onto the screens.
Should we deal with the other half of the question first around just the character of the area, and then we'll come back? Is that okay? So, yeah, I'm just a bit concerned. This is a creep towards complete overdevelopment of the area, and this may be the first step in that.
Yeah, I'll come in on that, if I may. No, I'd agree. I don't think with the idea that it isn't an appropriate area for a series of larger buildings. I think it's a very specific site. It's the end of a long road. Forgive me, I can't remember the name of the street at that point. But at the moment, you've got this long road through to an area of beautiful townscape, ending in what's effectively the back end of a building and a series of service yards. So I think we're quite keen to ensure that. I have to put glasses on. There we are. Yeah, Mount Preston Street. Thank you, Phil. Thank you to my glamorous assistant. Cheers. So at the moment, it ends in nothing. It's a very disappointing termination of an important route, and this gives it a sense of purpose. And it's a building that I think relates. The larger elements of the building relates to the larger blocks within the university. I accept that it's probably, I think it's 3 stories higher than Charles Morris at its highest point. So I think there is a logic to creating that I suppose intermediary for a piece of townscape between the lower buildings of the primarily residential conservation area, which I think we've got some good quality additions to through this scheme around the listed building, to create this almost like a fulcrum point that is a transition between that and the much larger massing of the university campus. And the applicants related the point about the detailing, so that there's a slight echo of the patterning, that kind of light and shade patterning that you get in the university buildings within the tower itself. It is a one-off building, this sitting on a site that has very few similar opportunities around it, and it's very specific to its location. Be my response.
Okay, Councillor Carlyle, I'm just going to put a pin in the other bit and move on to another councillor, and I'll swing back round to you, okay? Councillor Dye?
Well, I was just going to ask, while the screens are down, could we take the opportunity to go and take a look at the model and pictures?
We could. Councillor Hesselwood, you've got a question first. Or was yours the same question? You all just wanted me to stop and let you go and play. Okay. All right then, folks. Yeah, we'll take a pause while the tech's fixed and go and have a look at the modelling stuff. Thank you. Brilliant. I think we've now solved our tech issues, and thank you. Special shout out to Lewis and the backstage team for finding that workaround. That's excellent. In the green room, yeah, that's exactly how this works. So we go back to where we were, which was questions for officers. And for those watching, members have now been over and looked at the materials and the model and such like. So Councillor Dye, I think you were next to ask a question, or was your lone question to go and look?
Well, that was my original, but I have got another one. And if the issue is one of the height of the tallest tower, is there an option to reduce that height?
I can't speak to the scale of the building, the overall quantum of development. That's one for the applicant. What I would say is, I think it was alluded to earlier. Originally, there was the proposal was to balance the height across the site. However, the view was that diminished Springfield House being sandwiched between much taller buildings, and B, it had a severely detrimental effect on the west of the site in its relationship with the historic residential district. So the idea was to move the height to the least sensitive end, the area where there were already buildings of significant mass.
Thank you. I'm going to bring Daljit back in for Councillor Carlisle's question.
Thank you, Chair. Lewis, hopefully you can bring the plan up now. Can we have the slide before? Thank you. So I'm going to use a pointer and look at the larger screen here, Councillor Carlisle. So the Faversham's concern is that this development will overlook the Faversham. This is the Faversham and these are the grounds of the Faversham. Now, in terms of the topography, for those members that were on site, the Faversham sits at much higher ground than the site levels here. There's a difference in site levels between the two. And in terms of the lower elements of the building, which is a majority, which are this bit of the wing, the Springfield House itself, and the southwest wing, officers are of the view that any windows in this elevation won't lead to overlooking of the Faversham because of the tree screen here and the changing ground levels and the lower height of these buildings. There's no windows at all in this wing. In terms of the higher element, there are windows in this wing, but they overlook the front of the Faversham, which is taken up by a vehicle access, a driveway, and some green space here. But that green space is already overlooked from the street, which is Springfield Mount, I believe. So in terms of the impact, we think in terms of the public interest and the public impact, there's not a worsening of impact. There's not an unacceptable loss of privacy. Yes, there's overlooking, but it's overlooking areas which are already overlooked from public vantage points. So we don't think there's a unduly detrimental impact on the neighbouring use. So that's our position on there, but obviously members can take their own view. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Hesselwood?
Yeah, mine, if we could just go back to that slide, sorry, because mine was a question about the same thing. Because this is why we wanted to see the slides, and we've had a chance to look at it whilst we looked at the model over there. So am I right in thinking that the grounds of the Faversham that were referred to as like weddings, etc., the open space, that's to the where the smaller, not where the opposite end of the development where the big block is, the height. So just down from there, Daljit, just the other end there. So is that where the outside space is?
My understanding, I mean, you can bring the Faversham in again, but my understanding is that there's a lot of car parking around this area. There is some green space, but there's also a green area here. But you can actually drive in from there, drive down the side, and then drive to the back, drive through the cycling effect. So
yeah,
I suppose what I heard from the objector was that all the grounds are used in some ways, but from our point of view, in terms of this development, the overlooking, if there is overlooking, is from the taller element at this western end to the front, what is the front of Haversham.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, thank you. You just brought it up on a Google Map screen for me as well. So thank you. That's really helpful. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions from members, please? Councillor Khan?
Just on the highway, Lisa, while we were there, you witnessed also the heavy traffic on Hyde Street and Clarendon Way, and you did say there's going to be a delegated decision. You know, there's going to be more further plans. Can I suggest that the chair sees over those plans before it gets approved?
I'm happy with that. Yeah. Any other questions for officers? No? Okay, then we'll move on to any comments from members, please. Councillor Carlo?
Thank you, Chair. Heard a lot in the discussion about what's been planned here and around how the thought's gone on. I completely agree that road seems to go nowhere at the minute, and there could do with something at the end of it. I also completely agree that the existing building that's tacked onto the listed building here is not really a building we would want to retain in any state. So I'm very happy with it being removed. I have really got quite some concerns with this, though. I'm afraid. I feel the majority of it is fine. I wouldn't have minded if the lower elements were slightly lower as well, just to give the heritage building a bit more of its own, well, bit more prominence within it. But I do see that it's separated by the glass, so that helps. But the tower element, I'm really quite concerned about, really. I would have preferred some narrative of it stepping up or something like that more, something being showing more of a step from one end of the site to the other. I'm afraid to myself, it just looks like a tower plonked on the end of what otherwise could have been quite an acceptable development. I'm afraid for that reason, I'm not going to be able to support it today. I don't know if members, other members are minded to. Otherwise, I would ask for it to be deferred for more thought, but I will put that to other members to see what their thoughts are.
Any other comments from any other members, please? No? Okay. Does any officer wish to clarify anything further? No?
Okay, so I think I'm going to put forward what I think I understand Councillor Carlisle to mean, which is that the tower element is too high and needs it to be lower. It doesn't think it's appropriate in that context. I presume the issue is more about the design and townscape impact rather than any other impacts. Other than that, there's been some questions that have been asked around highways issues, questions about sustainability, and other members have asked questions about the details, but I'm assuming the responses from officers have addressed those concerns and there's no other issues to be raised with the applicant. And I think what Councillor Carlisle is saying, he doesn't mind this item being deferred for those discussions on the height of the tower to take place with the applicant. Now, if I've got that wrong in any way, happy to be corrected by the panel.
I think Councillor Cohen wanted to perhaps comment.
Yeah, so maybe just to give a slight contrary that might, then at least we've got something to choose between. I'm perfectly content with the height of the towers. I think it's a sensible place. As colleagues who've sat on this panel with me for some time will know, I have a real issue with the plethora of student development. So I'm delighted to see a student development actually in the right place. We often have our design officer with us who would kind of, well, it is what it is, and it is what it is, isn't it? I think it's a good quality design. I think it makes that move. I actually quite like the way it shifts the context from the lower level to the higher level. It almost goes with the flow of the area and links the two sections quite well. Obviously, Councillor Carlisle has a mildly different, although not wildly different, view. But so what I will do is I will move the proposal in the report. If somebody wants to second, they're welcome to. If not, that's entirely fine as well. But that's what I'll do.
Okay, so we've got a motion that's proposed and seconded, and therefore we will move to a vote. So all those in favour of the stated motion? Seven. All those against? 2. And there won't be any abstentions because that's everyone. Okay, so based on that, the stated motion has passed. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we'll take a 2-minute comfort break before we move straight into the following agenda item. Thank you. Thank you very much, folks, and welcome back. We're now moving on to agenda item number 9, which is a pre-app for Blenheim House on Duncombe Street. I'm going to invite the applicants to present to the panel. Please, can you introduce yourselves just before you start, and approximately 10 minutes, just to give us an idea of what you're bringing. Thank you.
Hi all, I'm Richard Konchak from Balfour BT Investments.
Katie Hayho, TPM Landscape Architect.
Good afternoon, Chair members. I'm Mark Worcester from Turley. We're the planning consultants on the project.
Good afternoon, members. I'm Neil O'Donnell from D Architectural, and we're the architects.
Good afternoon, Chris Deeks, representing from Balfour BT Investments, the applicant.
Apologies, it may have disconnected itself. I just need to go quickly get it fixed, if that's okay.
Just a note for those people watching online. Unfortunately, due to the technical issues, we're going to have to abandon the webcast element in order that we're able to see the information here. There will be minutes available online. The agendas will be published, and you'll be able to see all the information that we've gone through online. And we'll make sure that there's a link under this video so that you can access that nice and easily. I apologise for that, and thank you very much for watching us. Thanks.